and now to what we can do with those Boolean tables. Namely, for instance, as we have a Boolean table which shows whether the car has been manufactured later, we can multiply this with some product with the distances matrix, and we will get the information about how many miles have those cars traveled, those later made cars. So for instance, what's going to happen is, remember that some product started multiplying together cells one by one in these two tables, and it multiplied them and it added the multiplication result together. So it's this times plus this times this plus this times this plus this times this, and so forth. Now this is what some product does. When we multiply the distances the cars have traveled with this 0-1 table indicating whether the car was made later than the beginning of 2003, what's going to happen is that if we have 0 here and the car is older, then the distance traveled is not included. If we have a 1 here and the car has been made recently, then this distance is included. And the result is the length that has been traveled by cars which have been manufactured later. So let's write it down. Equals some product. The second table and the third table. Okay, and it turns out that the number of miles is 2 million, a little above 2 million. Okay, let's make another multiplication. Here we have whether the car has traveled more than 50,000 miles. Well, if we multiply this table of ones and zeros with the table of distances, it means that it basically just picks up the distances that are bigger than 50,000. If the distance was smaller than 50,000, then it's 0 times the distance. If it was bigger than 50,000, then it's 1 times distance. And it adds them all together, and we get the number of miles traveled by the cars which have traveled more than 50,000 miles. Yeah, that could make sense as well. So let's write. Okay, and for this number we get 3.4 million miles. And now what turns out to be true is that actually we don't have to create these Boolean tables which are used for selecting out some kind of instances or not selecting them. We don't have to create this table at all. Everything of that kind can actually be done in the mind of some product or in the memory of some product. Let's try the first one. We have to write it like this. Equals some product, parentheses begin, and now let's take at first dates, the block of dates. We have to put a parenthesis around it, double parenthesis, just in case, so that it will certainly work. Okay, so now if these dates, and let's write, are bigger than, and we just repeat ourselves, date 2003, semicolon 1, semicolon 1. So if these dates are bigger than the beginning of 2003, and now let's close the parentheses, and now inside the sum product this 0-1 table is now created. We compare the current, this doesn't give us anything still, but we compare the current date with the beginning of 2003. And if it's later, it actually, in the memory of some product, it writes down false, sorry, true, or 1. True is 1, 0 is false. Okay, and now let us take the result and multiply it like this. This is a little bit not standard in Excel. We write just inside the parentheses of some product another multiplication sign, and we multiply it with this lower table, which is the lengths of travel, lengths traveled. Let's put a parenthesis around this one as well, just in case. And here it is, the same number, 2.3 million. So once again, this first comparison creates this table of ones and zeros, or trues and falses, in some product's memory. And the second thing is it multiplies it with the distances, and what happens is exactly what we did previously, in a more lengthier way. Let's try it one more time here, at the lower table as well. So we write equals some product. Now what we have to do is we have to compare the mileages with 50,000. So double parenthesis, mileage is bigger than 50,000, and parenthesis closed. We multiply it with the mileage itself actually. So that's what we do here. And we press enter, and here it is, the same number. 3.4 million miles are traveled by cars which have traveled more than 50,000 miles. And now to our last point. We can actually, with some product, do it with more than two things being multiplied together. So let's now take the cars that have been manufactured later than 2003 and that have traveled more than 50,000 miles, so two conditions both together, and let's see how many miles they've traveled. So let's write down something like this. Equals some product, double parenthesis, first table, bigger than date 2003 semicolon 1 semicolon 1, parenthesis closed, multiplying it with another set of parentheses, now taking the second table, comparing it with 50,000, parentheses get closed, and another multiplication, and now we multiply with the mileages. So what it does, it creates, for the first comparison, it creates a table of ones and zeros or trues and falses, whether you have your car manufactured later than 1st January. The second table is a comparison with 50,000. So another table is created. So in a sense, both these tables that we did are created here, and all the results are multiplied with those mileages. And now recall one thing. Let us show it like this. Let's write the sum product in a more lengthy way. Equals sum product of the first 1 and 0 table. Remember, that meant that it's multiplied, it's manufactured late, with some product with the second one, that it travels a lot, this car, and some product with the mileages. So this is exactly what we did. Right now the number is the same, 1.6 million miles. But what we can see here is that here we can really explicitly see how this multiplication is being done. Namely, only then will the distance be accounted for if we have 1 in this in the date Boolean table, 1 in the distance Boolean table. Only then will this first Honda be counted for. if we have the first Ford, it is manufactured later, but it's not. It hasn't traveled 50,000 miles, so this one won't be accounted for. And the other way around, Audi is older. It has traveled a lot, and because it's older, it won't be accounted for. So in case of Boolean tables, if we multiply together many things in many conditions, it means that only if all the conditions are met, if all the ones coincide, only then will this car's distance be accounted for. But we're going to return to some product later, because we want to do something really fancy with it. This is like an introduction to a very complex use of some product. We'll come back to it.